This is Uncle Tech Support, and today we are building a new computer, my new HTPC. So my previous HTPC was in a Fractal Node 804, and the Fractal Node 804 is a great case. It has room for a lot of hard drives and stuff like that, and it's micro ATX compatible, which was a plus for me. But we did end up moving it around a lot, and for that it would have been beneficial if it was a bit smaller. So the new case that we are building in is this. This is the Silverstone Sugo SG16, something like that, and we're gonna build in it. So one of the reasons that we chose this case was that it supports ATX PSUs. And yes, I know everyone online that are into small form factor builds says to not use an ATX PSU with an ITX case because, well, I'm guessing it's because of space restraints, but I don't know yet. But I figured I'll have to make the mistake and learn myself. So we're going to use an ATX power supply in this computer case and see if it really is as bad as everyone says. So the parts for this build are a mix of new and old parts. Well, there's two new parts, the case and the motherboard. So this is the motherboard. This is the Asus ROG Strix B550i Gaming. This is a mini ITX motherboard. And yeah, there's also an X570 version, but I didn't really see the point of it because for X570 you do get a lot more connectivity, but on a mini ITX form factor you don't really have room for 4 M.2 slots and 4 full-length PCIe slots, so the B550 seemed to be okay, and well, the main reason was that it was on sale, of course. So in a small form factor case, one of the things you are giving up is cooling usually. Now there are a lot of small form factor cases that support liquid cooling, which helps a lot, I guess, but even so, we are going with the Ryzen R5 5600X. Although we will probably swap this out for a 3600 later on, because this might go into my girlfriend's computer instead, and then her 2700X is going into the server, which currently has the 3600. So yeah, 5600X. And then there is the question of the GPU. That's the other thing with small form factor cases. You are sort of giving up GPU compatibility a lot of the time. This particular case, I think it has a limit of 270 something millimeters, which means that this RTX 3060, that's definitely not going to fit. And this 5700 XT, it's not likely to fit either. Now the MSI 6600 XT Gaming X, that might actually fit because it's not that long. So the decision is between this graphics card and and the RX 6800. Now this is a very powerful GPU. It's the most powerful GPU that I own. Although, if I sold all these other ones, I could probably afford something better, but it's a lot more fun playing with many different GPUs instead of just one really fast one, in my opinion. Maybe I'm weird, I don't know. Anyway, I am tempted to go with this one, I'm going to be honest with you, but yeah, we'll see what we end up doing. The 6600 XT is not bad, it's just that this one is a lot faster. So cooling the CPU, we're going with air cooling, and the air cooler of choice is the AMD stock cooler, the AMD Wraith Spire, not the Stealth. The Stealth is, well, actually we may have to go with the Stealth if this doesn't fit, but this is our first choice, the Spire. I would actually have liked to use this. So this is a, well, this is just a heatsink. There's supposed to be a fan here. This is a Noctua LH9, I think. I originally bought this for AM3, and it turns out you can actually, I didn't know this to be honest, because I haven't used it for a long time, but you can remove the mounting bracket and you can replace it with an AM4 one, so you can get an AM4 one for this heatsink. But I also have to replace the fan because the bearing on the original fan, that's bad, so it makes a lot of noise. and I don't have a lot of other 92mm fans, so yeah. But we might go with the regular 92mm fan and not the slim one that comes with the heatsinks, because the slim ones are usually a bit worse than the regular sized ones. So if the Spire doesn't fit, this is our second choice. Although it might actually be better than the Spire. Maybe we have to test that in the future. Yeah. Anyway, the power supply, that's a Corsair HX650. That's really old. I think it's 10 years old now, but it still works fine. And well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or don't change it. I'm sure a lot of you also maybe use old power supplies that still work. I mean, if it's still functioning, you don't have any issues with the computer, it's probably fine. I wouldn't put an RTX 3090 on it, or the 4090, or whatever the next one is called, that's supposed to draw 480,000 watts, I don't know. The memory we are using is also repurposed, so this is the memory that was in the current HTPC, so it's more of an upgrade than building a new computer, I suppose, but yeah. You have to reuse the parts you can. Less e-waste and all that. Anyway, these are 8GB DIMMs. There's 2 of them, so 16 gigs in total. 32 is more ideal these days, but 16 gigs should be fine. These are dual rank sticks, so we get a bit of a performance improvement, and they're actually pretty decent overclockers. Not good, but you can do 3600 and 3300 at CL. I think it was CL 60, 19, I can't remember the timings. Anyway, CJR timings work fine on these DIMMs, so we might go for a bit of an overclock to get a bit more performance. And that's basically all the parts. At least all the parts that matter. There's also a SSD in there. It's a Kingston M.2 SSD. Actually, 2 of them. Here is the other one. This is a 200 gig SSD. It's not a big one. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's get to building.
If you're prepared to break the silence, I'll be out in the sunshine, running beside the lions. I've been feeling down, but I've been looking up, afraid to fall. God, I've been so down, can you pick me up? Don't let me fall. Can you show me how to fix this mess? I am down and on my knees, and I may fall as I'm so close to the edge.
Okay, let's start by opening up the case and see what's inside. It's the wrong side. I like the captive thumb screws they have on here. I always lose those when they are not captive, so that's very nice. What's this? Warranty information. Probably don't need that. And then there's a twist tie in here. Let's see if we can get that up. It's a bag. In the bag there's some motherboard screws, there's some feet, and there's some cable ties. Not sure how much cable management we will be doing, because this is an ITX case. I'm not the best at cable management, and managing in small form factor cases is apparently quite difficult. Now we should probably start by putting in the PSU. Right, so here's the power supply, and that actually goes in the front of this case. So that's the cutout for the SFX power supply, I suppose, and I'm guessing that this one also is supposed to fit in there. And then a cable comes around here. Should I not insert the power supply? Maybe I should. Yeah, starting with the power supply is a mistake. I see that now. Thankfully, I saw it before I inserted the motherboard. But yeah, I guess it's supposed to fit like this, and then you have the motherboard underneath. So motherboard first. Starting off with the I/O shield, because the B550 mini ITX motherboard from Asus does not have a built-in I/O shield. It's not a big deal. Here's the motherboard. It's not a lot of stuff that's going into this case, so this should be a fairly quick build. Now the motherboard's in. So, at least that part is done. Loosen these screws. Okay, so that wasn't... Now, oh yeah, of course, I almost forgot the front panel connectors. Now this Asus board has a handy connector for the front panel header. A front panel header connector thing. So you put this on the motherboard, and then you can hook up your front panel connectors to these. It's actually quite handy. I quite like this, especially in these tight builds. So that's your front panel connectors. Didn't have to untangle it. I'm very happy about that. There's no USB-C on the case though, so we can't use the USB-C header. Now let's see if we can get in a GPU. Did we decide on a GPU? I think we decided that I wanted to test the RX 6800, but maybe we should start with the 6600 XT. Let's see, 6800. Question is, will it fit? This is dignified. I probably have to remove the bracket on the PCIe slots. I think it fits. So, let's see, can I get the other camera? Maybe show you a bit better. There is some spare room to the top of the case here, so that's good. Okay, and then there's a power supply going in here. I kind of see what I meant by using an SFX power supply. You do get a lot more space, and space is very nice to have in these cases. Let's see, it's a 12 pin for the power for the motherboard. I think we're going to hook up these connectors before we put in the power supply. Okay, I did it. It's in. Now the 24 pin should be no problems. That's the 24 pin, and then there's the two 8 pins for the power supply. Now we're definitely not going. We are using the daisy chain PCI Express power, because the other one would mean we get even using two of these would mean we get even more cables in here, and given that we're already using a ATX power supply, more cables is not what we want. Okay, that's all the cables. Now the case has support for a fan on the rear here, and there's support for a fan on the front. Well, yeah, that's the front, yeah. But I'm not quite sure how big a fan you can fit when you are using a ATX power supply, so yeah, we might not be able to hook up a fan to that. We could place the fan down, but let's place it up. Okay, there we go. Now, in the power supply, this is a tight fit. And then there's the power supply screws. And it's in, and we're done. Almost. And there's the cable for the power supply. And let's see, I'm going to show you the front now. There's the front. Now you have, here is a place for a fan. I think 80 millimeters, maybe 92. 120 is never going to fit. It's either 80 or 92 millimeters. Maybe we will add a fan later, but not right now. It's actually not too bad, the ATX power supply. You do get better room with SFX power supply, I suppose, but that's actually not that bad, in my opinion. I do think the CPU though is going to get pretty hot without a fan bringing in cold air, but maybe I'm wrong. Well, we're going to test it out and see how it goes. That's the GPU mounted. And then there's not much cable management going on here. I think we're just going to test it, see how it performs like this, and then we make adjustments as we need to. So if it runs too hot, let's see what we can do to make it colder. But this will be our initial test configuration. So this video was filmed a good while back before Zen 4 released, and in the meantime I made some changes to the PC. So I swapped out the 5600X with the 3600, and I used the RX 6800 GPU. I play on a 4K TV at 60 Hz, and I don't really feel 120 Hz is necessary in the games that I play on this PC. So the 5600X felt like a bit of a waste in this PC, in my opinion. I mean, if you got the cash and you're buying new, then of course a 5600 or 5600X is a better buy than a 3600. But I already had the 3600 laying around, so I figured let's put it in the HTPC instead. At 4K, the GPU power is the really important part, and that's why I swapped in the RX 6800 over the 6600 XT. And even so, at full 4K, it could do with even more GPU power. So truth be told, I can just play the games at 1440p, and I can't really tell the difference between 1440p and 4K on the TV from the distance that I sit. And of course I use FSR when necessary. Anyway, let's get to the benchmarks. In Forza Horizon 5 we have an average of 89 frames per second with a 1% low of 74 frames per second and a 0.1% low of 65. Pretty decent performance. In Death Stranding we get 91 frames per second average with a 1% low of 79 and a 0.1% low at 65. So pretty similar performance to Forza Horizon. In Chivalry 2 we also get 90 frames per second average, but with worst frame times at 46.9 frames per second for the 1% low and 41.7 for the 0.1% low. Cyberpunk 2077 is tough to run at 60 frames per second in 4K. Here I use high settings, no ray tracing, and FSR set to quality. Then we get 67.5 frames per second on average, 54.2 frames per second for the 1% low and 45.1 for the 0.1% low, which is not perfect, but it's perfectly playable. And when you enable ray tracing, the FPS tanks pretty hard, so that's why we keep it at high with no ray tracing. In Plague Tales Requiem, we use medium settings with resolution optimizer set to balanced. This gets us above 60 frames per second for the average, although not by much, and the 0.1% low is pretty bad, but it's perfectly playable for me. We should also touch on heat, as ITX cases can often be hot boxes. In Cyberpunk 2077, the GPU hovers around 80 degrees Celsius, and the CPU is around a rather toasty 85 degrees Celsius. So this is with a rear exhaust fan installed. Temps are hot, but I'm not too worried about it, so for the time being I won't make any changes. The power consumption during Cyberpunk 2077 is about 350 watts from the wall. And we are using a 650 watt PSU, so plenty of power available. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm pretty happy with the HTPC. It doesn't take a lot of space. It's pretty powerful and fairly silent for what it is. I mean, it's not as silent as a big ATX case, but yeah, it's pretty good, and I'm happy with it. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.